Hello. Hello. Welcome to number 4 in my October 2022 series. This, I think, should be my last one, unless I get like enormous requests to cover in detail one of my other paintings that I did. Otherwise, I'm going to be moving on to the 100 head challenge.
I did these 31 paintings over the month of October for a challenge called Undying Tales, created by Stephanie Law.
So this is my cougar, who I will be going over in detail today.
There are videos made of these other 4 paintings that I did during that challenge because they are my favorites.
If you enjoy this kind of video, please consider subscribing, and you will get to see lots more. The video quality should be improving. I have figured out the lighting settings on my camera, and so we shouldn't have any more lighting issues. I did not have time to figure that out though while I was speeding through this 30.
The color is off here because I use a color erase pencil instead of a regular graphite pencil, and it doesn't show up very well on camera. So I up the contrast and a whole bunch of other things, but then it looks a little bit odd. I treated this cougar painting like a portrait, and so I wet my whole paper first before adding any watercolor. When I first laid down that yellow, I realized, oh wait, I don't think I want this in the eyes or some of the lighter areas. And then I reconsidered and realized actually the reference images that I'm using multiple ones. They all have a little bit of some kind of color in the white areas. And so I decided to go ahead and have fun and just put this yellow color everywhere and pull it out of the areas I don't want it with a clean, damp brush. Doing that doesn't necessarily bring the paper back to white, but it gets it pretty close. And for my intentions, it was just fine. White paper isn't really white anyways. It's actually off-white cream, very, very pale cream. So you're actually not getting white paper. You may have noticed that this video is the longest one in my October challenge series, and I think it's because I didn't lay enough watercolor down before switching over to the colored pencils. There's nothing wrong with a long video. There's nothing wrong with a long process for creating any type of art, but I was looking to create a workflow between watercolor and colored pencils that works best for me. And I just think that I could have added a lot more layers of watercolor before switching over to the colored pencils. I think I could have gotten the same effect in less time, and less time isn't necessarily always what I'm going for. Sometimes it's spending the time on the piece that is the gift. It's, oh, I'm sad I'm finishing this piece because I've enjoyed making it so much. You can see me adding and subtracting color to this area here around the neck or jaw. The reason for that is I'm using multiple photos and I just couldn't really decide which one I wanted it to look most like. I was struggling to imagine what it would look like if the head was in a different position or the neck was in a different position. So I was just playing around. I'm not necessarily happy with how that area turned out in the long run. I don't know if it looks particularly genuine, but it's not the worst painting I've ever made that I kind of cobbled together from different reference photos. I really want to be able to draw from imagination. That's something that I don't try very often anymore. When I have tried, it's been a pretty dismal failure. I can't see very detailed images in my mind most of the time. I thought real artists, imagine air quotes here, could see detailed images in their mind. All of the real artists could. It made me kind of reluctant to try to be an artist because of that. But actually, lots of artists don't see super clear images. I don't have aphantasia, but I don't have crystal clear images that I can just say, oh, I'm going to create this. Apparently a lot of artists do have aphantasia and it works for them. You just keep working the image until it looks how you want it to. And that's basically how I work. I work as if I have aphantasia. But since I technically don't, what I'm hoping is that I can kind of build up a combination of muscle memory and like some sort of inner library in my brain of how things look. I'm hoping to do that with portraits, like just maybe learn more instinctively the structure of the face. And of course, lots of other things too, like landscapes or buildings or, I don't know, bathtubs. I've sketched a lot of bathtubs and snails and mushrooms. As I mentioned earlier, I'm approaching this painting as if it's a portrait. It's not the first cat portrait that I did in this series. And I think that helped me understand more about how a cat's face is shaped. I really feel like this cougar and the earlier leopard I did are really similar to how my cat looks. Bengal tiger too, same kind of stretch. One of the reasons I like core watercolors is how much it spreads out. You can see it here after I spray the water. I shared this a bit at the beginning of the video that a great technique for doing portraits is to wet the whole paper down with water and then add in your color. And I rarely remember to do that. That is not a technique that you would ever use with colored pencils, which is what I was used to working with before. And so I would always forget to do it, but here I'm remembering. This is the moment where I feel like the portrait's finally moving its way into a direction that I prefer. Basically, like I like the color more. I like that I'm bringing in some red. Before that, it's just like, I don't know. I don't like to call it the ugly stage that a painting's in, but, you know, I mean, that's basically what it is. It's you don't like it. It feels completely unfinished and like it's not what you were going for at all. The ugly stage can be really short or really long, and in this painting's case, I feel like it was really long. That can be frustrating, but to be honest, I don't remember focusing on that at all. I was focused on my reference images and how beautiful everything was and how I wanted to create that likeness. Something that I like about the finished product of this painting that you'll see at the end is that there's a softness quality to it that I was able to achieve probably because of the technique that I was using, probably by wetting the whole paper down. And I really like that. I am not always sure what I'm going for. I have eclectic tastes, and I have a lot of different types of art that appeal to me. I'm not always really sure what I want to be making, what I want my work to look like. So when I see it, it's good to appreciate it. This painting and then the painting that I made a video about, the phonograph flower, I like the softness of that painting too. And I was actually thinking about cleaning that one up and making it a little bit more detailed. And I decided not to do that, and I like how it turned out. This pretty much completes the watercolor portion of this video. I'm going to be breaking out my heat lamp in a second and making sure that it's really dry. I also just left it for a while because you can't really put a wax oil-based pencil on top of watercolor with any success. I mean, wet watercolor like a wet page. So I make sure that it's really nice and dry before adding this pencil on top. Although it's not the most flattering thing for me, I like to leave in clips that show a bit of my mess sometimes. The last clip, you could see all the things around the edge of my workspace, and it kind of can keep the focus off of the painting, which is what I want our focus on. So I do a lot of close-ups like this one. But I also think it's good for you all to really enter my real world. Like, artists don't necessarily have ideal conditions. Although I like to keep my space pretty clean, it's typically pretty cluttered. And especially if I'm in the middle of a project, like I lose all sense of like what is going on around me, and I kind of tune everything out and as well as like the mess. And I just want to share that with you if you were out there feeling like, you know, your workspace isn't Instagram worthy at all times. Yeah, neither is mine. I really wonder whose really is, like how often everybody's space is as perfect as we often portray it to be in social media. Like that noise you heard right there, that's because I'm clumsy and moved my leg and hit something. Also, I'm not entirely convinced that YouTube is social media. It has a different feel than some of the other ones. I was busy chatting about other things, but you guys, the eyes, what does everybody think about them? I just feel like cougars have really gorgeous eyes. And I had a really fun time. I think I wasn't painting at this point, penciling them in. What do you call it when it's pencils? Is it a painting? I don't know. You guys tell me. Help me out. What am I supposed to call it? Drawing them in. And I was drawing them into my painting. I haven't shared, again, how focused I became on colored pencils while I was doing this challenge. I only had polychromos to start the challenge. Quickly realized like there's something about whatever's in watercolor that makes it difficult to use colored pencils on top, at least the polychromos that I was using. It may have been the core watercolors that were the problem, because core watercolors do not have the same ingredients as most other watercolors. Watercolors are classically made with gum arabic, and core watercolors, their base is something called aquazol, which can hold more pigment, and it has some better light fastness qualities. I'm not sure how gum arabic is as far as light fastness. It also may have been the kind of paper that I was using. I used a couple of different brands, and so I didn't pay that much attention to how it would work. I will be doing more tests in the future, and I will probably record them and make a video. But what I discovered was that although I love polychromos, sometimes they didn't work well, and there were other brands that worked much better, like Prismacolors, and then I discovered Caran d'Ache and Derwent as well. They go over watercolors of all kinds, no matter the brand, very well. You might notice that I use multiple brands in one painting, and that is because I don't have enough colors of each brand. I'm looking to change that in the future, and the reason for that is I know that different watercolor brands can work really differently, and so you need to know your paint really well. And if you're mixing up brands, sometimes that can stop you from really understanding the properties that each one has. So I would rather not be mixing up my colored pencils, but for the time being, that is what's going to happen because I need the colors that I need. I can't just make them the way you do in watercolor, although you can mix colors to some degree, but you know, sometimes it's just better if you have the color you need. It's certainly more difficult to mix colors with pencils than watercolor. I didn't experience many problems mixing the different brands of pencil, but I also was kind of in the zone and not paying attention, and maybe things would have gone better if I had the same brand. Maybe they wouldn't have. I'm not really sure. Like I said, I need to do some more tests to understand the properties of the different pencils better. One thing I'm pretty sure I noticed, though, is that the white or the light colors of the Prismacolor are great for coverage. The Polychromos white pencil is basically useless. I'm not sure what I've thought about the Caran d'Ache or the Derwent. I like to finish the eyes at the beginning of paintings because if you screw up the eyes, it's really hard to come back from that. But I did not do that at all in this whole challenge. I hope to implement it more in my 100 head challenge. I wish that I had put more shadows over the eyes. Like the eyelid creates somewhat of a shadow into the iris most of the time, and I didn't really do that here. I also didn't make the white reflection maybe as big as I could have, and I think that would have made the eyes look more alive. And that brings us to our next topic. One of the things I haven't really addressed in any of these videos I've done about my 31-day challenge is that all of the flora and fauna, I think all the videos I've made are about fauna, are endangered. And that makes me really sad. It makes me really scared to know that animals and plants everywhere are going extinct, mostly because of human influence. I know that it's mostly large corporations that are creating these issues, but it's humans everywhere, and there's so much that we could be doing if we had kind of a rule book, if we had steps set out for us. And I don't mean, oh, you should recycle. I don't mean, oh, you should compost or that you should buy used clothes. Like, yeah, there's a million things that we could be doing. What is the best practice? What will be most impactful? If the system was set up to make those things easy, life is really hard, and it's really hard to need to be mindful of your choices all the time. In the past, I was someone who was really hard on myself about my impact on the world, and I was really careful all the time. I've very much mellowed, and I just do my best, and I wish it was easier. I wish that there were ways that my best could be better because there were supports put in place, a rule book that outlines the different things that we could be doing that are effective, or if culture was just set up so that what we were doing didn't hurt so many of the other species around us. So even though my culture isn't set up to make being environmentally friendly easy, and there's no how to be an environmentally friendly human rulebook, there are ways that I can make an impact, and I felt that this challenge was one of them, just because it brings attention to some of the animals and plants that will be gone soon if we don't protect them. Energy loves attention. Attention is sought by every, I would say, like, atom in the universe. And when we pay attention to something, we're directing our love, and we're showing the world what needs more attention. And on that note, this painting is finished, and here's a close-up of this beautiful cougar.
So thanks for joining me. If I've convinced you by the end of this video that you would like to subscribe, please do. And so then I will see you in the next one. Bye.